Hello everyone, I would like to welcome you to my channel. Today we play Old World. Okay, first things first, to get this out of the way, to avoid any unnecessary confusion, there is no GW rules involved in this game. We don't play any iteration of Warhammer. What we do is we are using one-page rules and army lists there to, well, to simulate the old world. Because well, this set of rules is perfectly capable of doing this, because, well, as I understand, it was actually first written to it's sort of like a mimic Warhammer. I mean, everyone with the Warhammer armies was able to play one-page rules. Yet the system itself was, I mean, is much simpler, much more streamlined. Okay, so set of rules that we are using exactly, I mean, for this battle reports is one-page rules, Age of Fantasy Regiments. This is what it's called. On top of that, we are using a mode from the full version of the rulebook called Phased Battles. I mean, full version is available if you're a patron of the one-page rules, or you can buy it for like a few bucks in quite a few places. We did some minor changes, tweaks to the system again, so it can sort of like feel more like a Warhammer. I mean, without all the clumsiness and overcomplication. So what we did is when we charge and when we advance, I mean, when we move sort of like when we do like double move, we don't do this on the set values because the movement and the charges and the advanced movement, these are set values for every unit in the game. So what we did, we simply roll a die. I mean, we take the value of the movement, let's say it's 6 inches, and if we want to charge the unit, we just roll a die, and this is how we get the distance of a charge, or the you know, the running move, if I may say so. Also, when it comes to charges, we decided that the charges strikes first, because in the rules it's like a fight, it's happening simultaneously, which makes no sense in terms of the regiments. I mean, it's okay for this sort of like an Age of Sigmar iteration of the Age of Fantasy, but regiments, it just doesn't work for us. So charges strike first, and then if any units are, you know, still in melee, I mean in continuous melee, they strike simultaneously, but otherwise, you know, charges always goes first. And that's pretty much it. I mean, I have a few words after the battle, because I think that the system is lacking. I mean, needs to be polished a bit more, because there are some things missing. And I will give you my thoughts about it. Other than that, I hope you will enjoy this little battle report.
Nearby city of Bogenhafen is in flames and its population in despair. City streets are crawling with hideous, terrible man-shaped rats, which all of a sudden appeared from alley corners, gutters, or even holes in the ground. Bogenhafen militia and its inhabitants are putting a brave fight, but it's only a matter of time before the city falls. There is hope still. Imperial army of Talabekland is approaching city outskirts, but vile horde of rats is blocking the way forward, shielding the city from its relief. For holding each one of 3 objectives on the table, outskirts, crossroads and windmill, points will be awarded at the end of scenario. Army with more points wins the battle. Now armies and units as they deployed for battle. Before the start of the first turn, Skaven unit of Night Runners moved 12 inches using their scout ability.
I will.
Then the Horde moves. First to advance is a unit of warriors accompanied by wizard and a rattling gun team.
Let's move quick fast.
Next to move is another warrior horde led by Skaven Lord himself and joined by warp fire thrower team.
Scorched bear, human things.
Urged by hideous handler, monstrous rat ogres march forward.
Run!
Next activation saw Skaven slaves following obediently rest of the horde.
Aye, you will.
Night Runners, who in the beginning were scouting ahead of horde, changed their position slightly, thus finishing Skaven movement. Empire soldiers bravely march forward against incoming horrors. First to move is a unit of spearmen accompanied by sorceress.
Enemy sighted.
Halberdier unit along with army general also marches forward without hesitation.
Engage.
Mercenary crossbowmen moved and took a defensive position in the wheatfield.
Enemy sighted.
Great bulk of Luminarch also moves and positions itself slightly behind crossbowmen.
Power of sun at the palm of my hand.
Last but no least, Imperial Knights of Talabekland urge their massive steeds into a trot.
For the Emperor.
Beginning of the shooting phase, see Skaven jump into action.
Aye, you will.
As fortune would have it, great enthusiasm of Rat Crew translates to 0-5+ hits.
Quick fast, reload.
The rest of Skaven shooting, warp fire thrower and slave slings were out of range of any potential targets. Imperial cannon aimed at the horde of Skaven slaves.
Open fire.
The cannon scores one hit with deadly 3. This in the end translates into 2 dead ratmen. Crossbowmen opened fire on the rat horde that was approaching from the windmill direction.
Target received.
Crossbowmen scored 3 hits, and each of those is a killing shot, thinning the ranks of Skaven horde. Starting turn number 2, a Skaven unit in the center, accompanied by a vile rat monk, marched toward closest objective. Monk was trying to cast Sickness on 4+, aiming at the close-by Imperial troops. Yet, Sorceress accompanying Imperial Spear's unit easily dispersed his magic by using her Dispel die. Night Runners activated and took a flanking position, threatening Imperial Spear's unit if it tried to take any actions against Central Skaven Horde.
Yes.
Next activated were Rat Slaves, also moving toward Imperial unit. On the other side of the battlefield, Skaven unit with Warlord moved so it could claim Windmill objective.
Let's move quick fast.
Right flank? So Rat Ogres, hastened by the handler, move and take yet another objective.
Run.
Empire movement started with Knights doing orderly turn so they can face the incoming Rat Horde. Then, Spearman unit accompanied by Sorcerers boldly marched forward, unbothered so it would seem by numerous enemies ahead.
For the Emperor.
Sorceress conjured successfully Fireball, which she unleashed toward nearby Skaven unit. Unfortunately, rats proved to be pretty much fireproof and only one of them burned to crisp.
Aye, you will.
Luminarch moved slightly forward so it could better support troops on both of its sides. Imperial halberdiers, led by Army General, decided to charge incoming Skaven horde. To conduct a successful charge, Imperial unit needed to roll at least 3 on d6.
For the Empire!
Shooting phase started with Night Runners hurling numerous sharp objects at Imperial Spearman unit. Rats failed though to score any hits, which was significant because protection spell that Spearman unit was enchanted with was still in use, granting the unit +1 save. Next to fire was a rattling gun team that was accompanying Rat Warrior's unit. Again, like before, these rats failed to score any hits. Lastly, Skaven slaves swing their slings, releasing cloud of deadly projectiles. Effect was far from dramatic. Slaves scored miserable 2 hits, which were easily saved with the help of protection spell, yet the spell itself was no more due to mentioned scored hits. Talabeclan troops started their shooting with cannon salvos, yet this time shot went wide, doing no harm. Now Luminarch turned its deadly gaze towards Skaven warrior horde. It is not a perfect weapon to combat hordes of weak enemies. Still, in a given situation, any assistance was more than welcome.
Power of sun at the palm of my hand.
Luminarch scores only 1 hit, yet the Skaven save it on 6, escaping any harm. Time has come now to decide the outcome of melee between Imperial Halberds and Skaven warrior unit. Halberdiers unit had 10 ordinary troopers attacks and 1 additional from Sergeant. Adding to that were Army General's attack and his inspiring, allowing everyone to hit on 4+. The dice roll for the soldiers of the Empire was dramatically poor, landing only 4 hits, which ultimately, after the saves, granted them only 3 kills. Skaven amassed similar amounts of attacks since their warlord was accompanying them as well, yet they were hitting on 5+, which seemed like a serious disadvantage. Nevertheless, rats, possibly more scared of their warlord than the enemy, scored 6 hits. Imperials managed 3 saves, so 3 troopers died killed by vicious rats. As a result, first round of combat ended in a draw. This concluded turn number 2. Skaven initiated their actions with the monk trying to cast Filth spell. Required dice score is 3+. This time sorcerers fail to dispel the foul magic. Spell was successful, buffing 2 nearby Skaven units and granting them poison in their next engagement. This was potentially significant since one of those units charged Imperial Spearmen. Night Runners also charged the same unit from the flank.
Ambush!
In the meantime, on the far left flank, Rat Ogres reorientated their position, aiming toward new targets. Next activation saw Skaven slaves reposition slightly. It was time for the Empire activation. Priority belonged to knights who spurred their horses and charged flank of the close-by Skaven horde.
Charge for the Empire!
Next was Luminarch, which turned slightly, aiming its deadly beam weapon toward closing Rat Ogres. Crossbowmen reposition as well so they can support center of the battlefield. At the start of the shooting phase, Skaven slaves chose to put covering fire on the Luminarch, thus forcing it to test morale. Slaves scored 1/6 and then managed to score 4+, which forced Imperial Machine to mention the morale test. The test was a failure, which caused wavering on Luminarch, effectively stopping it from firing in its next activation.
Help us!
Now it was time for the Empire shooting phase. Cannon opened fire aiming at the slaves.
Open fire!
A hit was scored, which translated in the end into 2 dead rat slaves. Skaven slaves were also a target for mercenary crossbowmen.
Lose!
The salvo was a devastating one, hitting 7 times out of 10. Since slaves had pretty much no protection at all, 7 hits translated into 7 dead rats and a wavering state for the whole unit. In the combat phase, charging Rat Horde loses one of their ranks, skewered on the Imperial Spear. The whole Skaven unit charging the Spearman front, along with Hero and Rattling team, scores only 3 hits. Yet Imperial saves, despite protection spell, are highly ineffective and 3 human soldiers dies. Now, the flank attack by Night Runners is decided. Every rat has 2 attacks which are being used to a deadly effect, causing 4 more dead.
Help us!
In return, Spearmen attack Skaven to their front, causing 6 hits, where 2 were scored by the sorceress herself. Surprisingly, 5+ Skaven saves are pretty successful and only 3 vermin dies. After calculating casualties on both sides, bonuses for whole rows, standard and musicians, it is clear that the Talabekland Spearman has lost the fight. Additionally, the unit failed its morale test and it's now wavering. In the meantime, on the right flank, Knight's charge on the Skaven horde led by Warlord is gaining momentum. Impact hits alone, doubled by equipped lances, crush 7 vile rats. In the melee itself, Knights fare rather well, but again, Skaven lucky saving causes only 2 of them to die. Next, fight continues between Imperial Halberdiers and what's left of Skaven unit. Imperial troops slaughter the remnants of Vermin Horde, leaving only Warlord and a Standard Bearer alive. Yet, vicious rats still manage to kill 3 human soldiers in return. Worst still, remaining Skaven managed to pass morale tests using Warlord's quality. Because of that, Imperial troops are unable to spread their attack and bring relief to the wavering left wing of their army.
Die, you will.
The last turn is initiated by Skaven Monk, who with success on 5+, casts terrible Pestilence spell. Only 3 human soldiers are not affected by the spell. The rest of the unit must roll for a save. This has a terrifying and catastrophic effect. 8 spearmen dies. Next, Skaven unit that was fighting against the spearmen turns to the right and marches forward, being content that their enemy was all but neutralized. It was not certain that this sort of maneuver could be done, so fate was called upon, meaning we roll the die. Next activation belongs to Night Runners, who again charges decimated spearman unit. Skaven slaves are using action Hunker Down, which grants them bonus if they are fired upon, and additionally removes Wavering State from the unit. Rat Ogres move forward again, but it is clear by now that they will not play any significant role in this battle. Amazingly still alive, Skaven Warlord along with his comrade also did Hunker Down, removing Wavering State. The Empire turn starts with crossbowmen retreating slightly. Then, Knights charged again what was left of Skaven Horde to the front. Shooting phase is initiated by Skaven Rattling Gun. Team was targeting nearby crossbowmen and managed to score 1 kill. Empire gun crew opens fire, but they fail to hit any target. Now crossbowmen opened fire on close by Skaven, hitting on 5 pluses. 4 hits, 1 with rending, translated into 3 dead vermin. In the close combat phase, Night Runners furiously attacks remnants of Spearman unit accompanied by the Sorceress. Skaven scores 7 hits on 4 pluses, 2 being saved by Imperial troopers, leaving alive only Sorceress and the unit's Sergeant. Nevertheless, units get destroyed because it was below half strength and wavered. Nightly Charge crushes what was left of Skaven unit and kills Warlord with impact hits alone.
Destroy them.
This is where the battle ends. Although Imperial army still has strength to continue the attack against Skaven, Rats are in possession of key battlefield objectives, and there is no hope of regaining those in due time. Vermin are victorious, for a time being.
Okay, so how you like the battle? There were 3 people involved in this game, 2 were playing and I was actually filming, and all of us liked it very much. It did feel like old world. Okay, but now I wanted to say a few words about the things that should be fixed or added into the game mechanics. So, first of all, we played basic scenario from the rulebook, and 4 turns is not enough time for this system. I mean, it's presumably okay for Age of Fantasy, but for Age of Fantasy Regiments, where you do not have a total freedom of movement and you actually actively trying to outmaneuver your opponent, 4 turns are not enough to play a fair game. Simple as that. Next thing that is missing is a set height for units. I mean, for example, infantry is height 2, cavalry height 3, ogres height 4, and so on. There is no rules governing how units are blocking line of sight to each other when we take their height into account. As an example, in the battle you just watched, there was a question, is Luminarch allowed to shoot enemies while being behind unit of infantry? Or can enemies shoot at Luminarch if the machine is behind some infantry? We decided yes in both those cases, but this is not covered in the rules. Very important thing missing, in my opinion, that is a rule which says that a given unit can charge an enemy unit only if it sees it before declaring charge, before moving actually. Otherwise, all the flanking and maneuvering has very little sense, right? I move my light cavalry, let's say, onto the flank of an enemy infantry unit. They can't see me. But in their turn, the way the rules work now, the infantry can simply turn and charge my light horse. In our game we did play with this rule, and I would say this is something that needs to be added, needs to find its way into the Age of Fantasy Regiments. One more thing that would be nice to have is to grant to some units more maneuverability than other units, like the Skaven Night Runners in the game. In my opinion, they should be allowed to do more turns than, well, normal infantry blocks. Well, the Empire didn't have any light horse, like, let's just like pistoliers, right? But if they did, they also should have some rule called skirmishers or whatever that would allow them for more maneuverability. Otherwise, they can be easily caught and destroyed by larger and heavier units, if you know what I mean. These are our main points, well, at least for now. Again, I hope you enjoyed the game. If you did, please consider subscribing, liking and commenting, especially if you want to see more of this kind of content. For now, I thank you all for watching, and until next time, cheers!